Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Book Trek 2025, the summer of Trek, the search for Trek. We are winding down Book Trek for 2025. This is an event created by Vin at Revenant Reads, where we just read and celebrate Star Trek all summer long. A nice, long, leisurely event where if you pick up a Star Trek book, you have participated in Book Trek. I've been reading a lot of Star Trek and also indulging quite a bit in one of our away missions, which is to read popular science. But there's only a few days left in Book Trek 2025. So last night I reread a Star Trek novel, Star Trek: The Next Generation, a teleplay adaptation. Every once in a while, Star Trek will adapt. They will take the teleplay of an hour-long TV show, a TV episode, and make a novel out of it. Now, I have said on Book Trek many times over many years that I wish they would do that for about 20 of the original episodes. Just make a book out of it. They haven't done that. They're never going to do that. But occasionally it does happen that in other franchises, that is what they will do. I like it. I like it as a gambit. I am curious to know. I'm not 100% up on my TV history. I'm curious to know, but I'd be willing to bet that Star Trek was the first TV franchise to ever do that. To ever take the shooting script of a TV show, an episode, and make a book out of it. But last night I reread another one of those, All Good Things, ... A novel by Michael Jan Friedman, based on the episode by Ronald Moore and Brannon Braga. This is the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, in which the extra-dimensional space god Q returns as he appeared in the first episode to put humanity on trial. And it's up to Jean-Luc Picard to save them, and he bounces all around time while he's doing it, including in a ludicrous scene, dipping his hand into a pool of goo in the primordial earth and presumably, by implication, starting the biomedical catalysm that causes life on Earth. It causes self-replicating life on Earth. So we all owe that to Captain Picard. I watched this when it was on TV, and I was grousing the whole time to my dogs. At the time, I was grousing the whole time. The title refers to the saying, all good things come to an end. And I was saying, yeah, and Star Trek: The Next Generation also comes to an end. Because I didn't like the show at all. I thought it was static, boring, preachy. Just Star Trek: The Administrative Era. That's basically what I thought of it as, despite occasionally exciting episodes. Now, that was a mistake, and that was a mistake that I needed Book Trek to show me. It was Book Trek years ago that showed me that I was measuring The Next Generation all wrong. And once I started to measure it correctly, I saw at least some of what caused it to create so many fans when it was on TV. And this novel covers the same ground as that final episode, only much bigger. Which makes sense. That is one of the things you can do if you write up a TV show with $1 million budget. A TV show with $1 million budget, $1 million isn't what it used to be. Once you work in the special effects, you don't have much left. And also, live action TV shows are at the mercy of scheduling, previous commitments. I mean, for the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which by the end of its 7-year run knew that it was beloved. Everybody connected with the show knew that it was beloved, knew that they had done it right. There had never been a falling off. There had never been a final season of Game of Thrones. There had never been anything like that. They'd done it right. And everybody connected with the show knew that. So in an ideal world, you would want to go back over those 7 years and bring back, at least for a minute or two, a whole bunch of characters, a whole bunch of people from that run, all of whom were still alive and still physically resembled the parts that they played. You'd want to have done that, but you can't. You can't do that when other actors have schedules. Maybe they've been falling out or whatnot. You're not on any kind of restrictions like that in a novel. Not only for characters who have appeared in the past, but also for all sorts of other things too. All sorts of special effects extravaganzas about not only the distant past, but the distant future. So this Michael Jan Friedman doesn't always do it for me as a Star Trek author, but this was infinitely more satisfying than that final episode, which, to be fair, for a long time I thought was only satisfying because it meant that this boring show was over. And then years later, for Book Trek, I rewatched all of Star Trek The Next Generation and worked my way up to All Good Things at the very end, noticed right away all the stuff that was going on, all the subtleties of character acting, that we really didn't get a lot of that in the original series, and that is the point of this show. In a way that, again, there are diametrical opposites for this and the original series. Diametrical opposites. Think about, well, you won't think about this, but think about the beginning of Star Trek V, the movie Star Trek V. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are in Yosemite National Park, and they're around a campfire. And McCoy grouses and says, shore leave comes around, and what do? Other people spend it with their families. We spend it together. And Kirk makes a tough guy comment, but the point of the scene is that they are family. And if you watch the original series, you see that there is a bond between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. The others, yes, the other famous bridge crew members, but especially those three, that's locked in place when the show is hitting its stride, in the middle of the first season even. Whereas with The Next Generation is about the story of a crew becoming family. They aren't family to start with. They become family. And once I knew to look for things like that, subtleties like that, All Good Things made so much more sense to me, and I liked it so much more. But even though I liked the episode when I watched it again so much more, I liked the book even more. This was really enjoyable. It's a fairly static plot premise, and I guess that plays to Michael Jan Friedman's strengths because he's not very good at things that aren't static. I've learned that from reading him. But he works perfectly with this storyline. I don't know. I don't want to be, I don't want to imply any insult here. I don't know how much of that has to do with the fact that he's relying on someone else's work. Certainly there's a lot in here that wasn't in that final episode. So maybe 6 one, half a dozen of another. But in either case, my Book Trek reading for last night was great fun. This was very enjoyable. Eyes wide open for it this time around. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to try and get more Trek reading in before the month comes to an end. It's rather melancholy. But I'm going to try to do that. Maybe some rereading. But either way, I will let you know what I pick, and we'll talk about it then. Thank you, BookTube.